Now, while those looking to buy are struggling to get mortgage approval, homeowners themselves are desperately trying to meet the repayments on theirs. But for those in mortgage arrears, is switching to an interest-free a viable or indeed possible option? Karl Deeter of Irish Mortgage Brokers and Angela Keegan of MyHome.ie join us now to look at this and other property news. Good to see you all again.
Good to see you.
Karl, interest only. It's there's a queue out the door to get them.
Well, actually, the people who are taking out interest-only mortgages now, it's not new borrowers, it's existing borrowers who are unable to pay their loans. That's actually the biggest change into interest-only that we've seen. Sometimes people say if you're having mortgage problems, extend the term. An interest-only loan, because you're not paying back any capital, in theory the term could be 1,000 years, although obviously you wouldn't live that long. It's really being used at the moment as a mechanism to stop people from going under. In the past it was quite often common in investment property, the reason is that you can offset a certain percentage of your mortgage interest. Now banks, even on investment properties, want to see a capacity to repay, so they want to know that you're going to be able to pay that loan down. And some people on the residential side took out interest-only loans because they might have had a pension which they were funding in order to pay it off. Some banks had it in there, like KBC, where there was 3 years where you could take what's called a flexi annuity at any stage. By and large now, though, interest-only mortgages are a thing of the past. Banks need the repayments. It's actually an important part of bank funding. They do new mortgages through the money that people pay back on their old mortgages, so it's a change in practice.
If they don't entertain the thought of interest only, then they are going to wind up with bundles of keys sitting in a drawer somewhere.
That's right. The thing is, at the moment there's greater than 60,000 people with arrears. In other words, they're not paying the full amount, or they're behind by at least more than 90 days. A lot of them have changed to interest only. Some are even on less than interest only. There's a thing called a deferred interest scheme. Other than that, the first line of defence for a household and for a bank when people get into trouble and they're unable to pay is to put the loan on interest only. So it means that over 100,000 people at this stage are likely on interest only loans, not because that's what they initially took out, but because that's what they're doing in order to stay afloat. And the banks are accommodating people in that. They're not telling you no. What they might do, though, is if you're living in the city centre and you have 2 cars, they might say, well, why should we do interest only if you want to have a certain level of lifestyle and not pay your full mortgage payment? There is within this a negotiation process that has to be fair to both sides.
Angela, during the boom years, any kind of investor, whether they were small or big, or somebody just trying, as Karl just said, even somebody just trying to fund their own pension, they were going in looking for second properties, and interest only was the only way.
I think interest only was the only way for investors, but I also think for some people in the residential market in the boom years, when they saw a property that they couldn't quite afford, they were topping up a mortgage with an interest-only mortgage. So we might have come down heavy on the banks last year for not making funding available, and we've still got to see what's going to happen this year. But I think one of the good things is interest-only mortgages are not being offered to first-time buyers or trader-uppers at this stage, because, as Karl said, it's really only kicking the can down the road. And particularly in a market where we're uncertain as to what's going to happen in the next few years, it's really not an option.
Okay, well, I got to visit a house, a very famous house, in the last couple of days. Now, if you have been searching for a property with a bit of an historical angle to it, then this might be something that might be just up your street, and it's something that you just might bite on. Take a look at this. During my childhood, just the mere mention of Count Dracula saw to it that there was no need for syrup of figs. The man who created the evil Count grew up in this house, and now, 100 years after his death, it's up for sale. Louise, how long has this house been in your family?
Well, Mum was here since she was 6, so over 80 years now. Yeah.
Wow. What was it like growing up here?
To say I felt blessed, yeah, privileged, because we were always made very aware of its heritage and its history. So, yeah, it's such a wow factor among friends when you explain that it was Bram Stokers' house, you know, the guy who wrote Dracula. And
growing up in the house, though, your dad, as much as your dad and your mum made you and the rest of your siblings aware of its history, he also tried to protect the fact that...
He certainly did, yeah. Because we used to get people coming to the house, even though there was nothing to signify it was Bram Stokers' place. But Dad didn't really want that intrusion on the family life, so he refused to put a plaque up. And so there was, like in the family archive, we have newspaper clippings of "No Fangs" said Keegan and all that sort of stuff.
Because pressure was put on him to erect
absolutely, yeah, there was. Yeah, and we, as kids, wanted it. We loved the publicity and we loved the excitement, and we wanted it. But no, Dad wouldn't go along with it.
Right outside this house is a gorgeous park, Bram Stokers Park, as it is called now. It did become overgrown and derelict for a while, and your mother was responsible for it.
That's right, 1976, yeah, because she had great memories of it being like having tennis courts and seats all around the edges. So it used to break her heart to see it turning into a rubbish dump, people throwing their refuge over the railings and things. So in 1976 she got this bright idea to clean it up, and she went around the different residents and different businesses in the area, and she collected donations, and they basically revamped the park, did it up, and we got out and we lined the park with tennis courts and played cricket there, and we had keys. It was a residential park, so only the people in the Crescent were allowed to use it at the time.
Unfortunately, the house is up for sale.
Yes, unfortunately.
How does that make you feel?
Well, definitely pulls on the heartstrings, you know. It's been in the family for so long, and my mother loved the house with an absolute passion and always wished to preserve the house and the garden. I mean, all the other houses in the Crescent have developments at the end of the garden, but Mum wouldn't, you know, touch the garden. She kept it intact because she was so aware of the history of the house. So, yeah, it's just, yeah, she loved it with passion, so I hate to leave it. I hate to sell it on to, you know, but it has to be done, you know.
You would love it if the state stepped in and bought this.
Gosh, yeah. I mean,
because of its historical
value. I mean, the park itself is Bram Stokers Park, and this is Bram Stokers' birthplace. It's such a wonderful opportunity to you know, preserve his heritage and to maybe even cause more tourism and give jobs and, you know, make it a museum or a library.
Yeah, well, would you have a problem if it became a museum?
Oh my God, no. I mean, I'd love to be the last family who lived here, you know, that would be lovely, and driving by, it's going to be weird to think we don't own it anymore, so to see it being preserved would be a real bonus, you know, a real plus.
So, Louise, there's more history than just Bram Stoker attached to this house.
That's right, yeah.
And this bit of history is from 1916, 1917.
Yeah, around that time.
And it focuses on this room.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, at that time, Mrs. Boland owned the house and lived here, and she's the mother of Harry Boland. And when Harry Boland was in the United States raising money with De Valera for the cause, the Russians were also there doing the same thing, and they weren't having as much luck. So they asked the Irish for a loan, basically.